Good evening and welcome to another edition of everyone's favorite radio show. And even though now some of this is actually radio and video, so look out, folks. Look out, folks. Here we go. You know him, you love him. He's Deputy Chief Larry Conley, our fearless leader of the Larry Conley radio show with the Knights. Great interview that we're going to have. He's going to introduce the guests and everything. But now, without further ado, here he is, ladies and gentlemen. You know him, you love him, Larry Conley.
Yay.
It feels weird when you do it on video because you speak blushing, And I guess we still didn't get the clap track yet, huh? I'm still working on.
You want me to clap?
Yeah, we got it. I don't know if it's for this one.
Okay, future. All right, looking forward to this. This sounds a little choppy than what you're used to in the past decade that we've been doing this. That's because we're on a new format, ladies and gentlemen, and the new format that Clarion and Fire Engineering is always looking for better ways to do what we do and make it more polished and all. So we're getting started with the new program. Looking forward to getting used to this, like we got used to the old program on Blog Talk Radio. So bear with us as we kind of go along, but we're definitely the plan is to deliver a great show as we always do. We're a week out now as we speak, and because this is going to air on May the 8th, and be a year day after David's birthday, right? David's gonna be 73 years old.
Actually, he's 74.
But anyway,
you're adopted.
Yeah, but David is going to turn whatever age. I'll let him review that when he comes back because he's fading out again. It's that 1G Wi-Fi. He won't upgrade and pay for a better Wi-Fi, but he's going to be a year old on May the 7th, so May the 8th is when the show will air. But as of this recording, we're a week out of FDIC, one of the biggest, baddest fire department conferences in North America, Fire Departments Instructors Conference, coming at you live from Indianapolis, Indiana, next week. And so we're looking forward to attending that. Definitely by the time the show airs, FDIC will be over, and then we'll go ahead and, have a post-show, I guess you could say, discussion after FDIC, discussing all the great things. During FDIC, we have live from FDIC, and I'll be doing that solo. David has some film obligations he has to take care of Atlanta, and then he'll head up. But we'll be doing the live from FDIC. So by the time you hear this show, you've been seeing the live show, which is Tuesday at FDIC from 8 to 9 o'clock in the morning, early in the morning. So I get my coffee, wipe the sleep out of my eye, and try to make sure that we deliver a great product on that day as well. So I'm looking forward to what's to come. Looking forward to talking about it afterwards. And I'm also looking forward to listening to what we got talked about tonight with our esteemed guests. But if you're going to FDIC, make sure that, which I'm sure all of you are, but going to FDIC, it's always kind of a, you work all year doing your job, you got your head down, you're doing a good job, you're making a difference in your community, and it's a great way to gather and kind of celebrate what we do in our respective communities. This year is going to be a lot different, of course, because we don't have our fearless leader Bobby Halton with us, so it's going to be a weird, different, and maybe quieter and a little more solemn. And I thought there's going to be some dedication on Wednesday, and also dedications on Wednesday night at 5:30 to 7:15. And so I've been honored to be one of the people that has to speak at that, and I'm trying to come up with something I can say within 3 minutes. So 3 minutes not easy to quantify all my 20 plus years of knowing Bobby Halton, but we'll give it a shot and make sure that we do that so we can respect everyone who's been asked to speak. But if Bobby has taught me anything, is that just work hard and leave a legacy. I know a lot of us think that we're not contributors or to what we do, are not the best contributors, and we should do that. Set a goal, make it happen. It doesn't have to be as big as writing books and being a great speaker and all that. Sometimes you could just be a great team member and do something as simple as that and make a difference in wherever you work, however big that community is. Make a difference, however big, however small. It all is important. Every puzzle piece in the mosaic of what we do is important. And if everybody takes up that mentality of being number one and being them, then you're better for the team. And sometimes that's going to look like I wrote a book. Sometimes it's going to look like I'm a great speaker. Sometimes it's going to look like you made a death-defying save on the fire scene. But it all starts with what David and I preach all the time, is that personal leadership and that personal accountability and that mental fitness. All of that contributes to your contribution. And even if you make a great rescue, it took a team of people that may not get recognized to help you with that. So anyway, we're all important, and we all have a personal stake in the success of your individual fire teams as well as American Fire Service, which is kind of a good segue into what we're going to be talking about tonight. And I'm excited to have on the show tonight. And you probably heard of him. He's when it comes to training and preparing people for advancement in the fire service. There are a few names that come to mind. One of the names that we're honored to have on tonight is Chief Freddie Fernandez out of Miami. And you probably heard of him, especially if you've heard of the Fire Assessment Center prep. And he's been successful for many years in making sure that firefighters are ready for the advancement. And the reason it's so important to prepare is because there is a certain preparation and methodology to do all of this. And if you work hard in your preparation, by the time it's time to be in front of those who need to review, it should be reviewed for you because it's not, you're prepared. I've had the pleasure of sitting on many assessment teams where we have to assess candidates who come in and present their case based on the matrix that we have in front of us. You can always tell the ones who were prepared, the ones who um, took the time to invest in themselves. They spent the time, they spent the money, they networked with different people who are already successful in the process, and you could tell. And then you could tell the ones that thought they can just kind of come in and BS the system, and the system was designed to smoke those out as well, and they didn't score as high. But there is a different certain methodology. But what I can always appreciate about people like Chief Freddie Fernandez is that they had to take time to research what it takes for you to be successful. And that's a lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of, and then test that theory. And then when they test that theory and they have success with people who can attest to their guidance as why they're promoted now, it's even a better testament to all the work you put in. Matter of fact, when I met Bobby Halton years ago, I was preparing for the captain's test in St. Louis, Missouri. And Bobby worked for a testing company called Burroughs and Rock Hill, I think. And back in the day before it was Rock Hill and Halton. And so that's where I met Bobby. He was one of the instructors, and Bobby is a great instructor. And a lot of the things that he was teaching us was instrumental in me becoming a captain on the St. Louis Fire Department. Matter of fact, some of the principles were so um, it was lifelong principles that even helped me become deputy chief because I was able to refer back to those principles as well as update with some new information that people were looking for in these different job promotions. So that's another historic thing going back with Bobby as far as why preparation is so important. And in the Bobby in the company, they weren't cheap. I mean, I think I had to eat Vienna Sacha and ramen noodles for about 2 months to pay for it. But hey, I'm here now and I can afford a steak, So like, so, so listen, listen to everyone. Be cheap, no. But seriously, it's going to take some sacrifice. If you haven't sacrificed some time or some money or some sleep, then you might not be serious about advancing. So I'm not going to take all the time. I just, me, when we get the show started, I always like to start my little soapbox before we move on with the guests. But we're going to talk today about Chief Fernandez's new book. I love the name of the book. It makes it sound like a book you want to buy. It makes it sound like the book sounds like something. If I read this, I'm definitely going to be successful. It's the Fire Assessment Center 360. That means you got everything covered. And then also the subtitle, Climb Past Your Competition. And if you are reading something that says Climb Past Your Competition, I'm going to tell you, I haven't read the whole book. It's brand new, fresh off the press, but the parts I've read, I can see why if you don't read this book, then somebody who has read this book are going to be climbing past you big time after they get the principles out this book. We are esteemed to be or honored to be mentioned in the book as well. I'm sure Chief Fernandez will touch on that. And also like the mission statement Chief Fernandez has for his Fire Assessment Center prep, which states that they want to develop excellent fire officers that can demonstrate their knowledge, skills, and abilities on the promotional exam. And it's, David and I always talk about having that personal mission statement or that personal constitution, and let that be your guide in making sure that you're the best you can be. So, and another thing that I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna let Chief Fernandez just run with it, is that in the book, if you're one of those people who just say, "Hey, just give me the secrets and I'm out," this is probably not the book for you. It's definitely not a quick hit bullet point book that you're gonna get in 3 chapters. We don't ever start getting to the nuts and bolts of this thing until of how to pass an assessment test until maybe chapter 6 and beyond. The first 5 chapters is definitely addressing something near and dear to David and I, which is that personal leadership. So he has a ton of stories and resources and things like that and tools available that strictly prepares you and maybe even ask you the question, are you really ready for this? Because a lot of times people will go for the badge, but they're just going for the badge for the wrong reasons. So if you're not preparing yourself for the promotion, for the new responsibility, you may luck out and pass the test, but your deficit in leadership, your deficit in being able to handle the weight of the new responsibility will catch up with you. And if it doesn't crush you by your peers, it's definitely going to frustrate you because you're going to wonder why you're not um, as productive as an officer. And so that was my takeaway from it. And hopefully, Chief Fernandez can either validate that or say, no, you got it all wrong. So anyway, let's get started and go ahead and get into the new book. So Chief Fernandez, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. How many books is this for you?
This is actually my first official book. I wrote one many years ago, a short ebook for entry level interview processes, but this is my first official printed press 300-page book. So I'm super excited about it. And I'm so happy to be on the show with you and honored that you'd have me as a guest. So thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Give us a little history on Chief Freddie Fernandez. Is it Frederick, or is it Freddie, or is it
I love going by just Chief Freddie, not even the last name.
All right. So give a little history getting started. How long you been in the business? What motivated you to take on this venture of helping people with exam prep?
Well, thank you for allowing me to share a little bit about my background. I got hired in the fire service in 1983, so 40 years ago as of today's taping. And I like to say that I've been a student of the game for all 40 of those years, including today. I'm constantly trying to learn. But what got me into the fire service as a young person, I had a lot of cases around my neighborhood where there were big events. We actually had a plane crash about 4 or 5 blocks from my home one time. I live near the Miami International Airport. And I had a lot of other events, and I saw the firefighters working, and I says, that is just something I like to do. I was drawn to that, the excitement of helping people. So I got hired in Miami Fire Department, which was great because I got to work in the community where I grew up in. My lieutenant station, where I worked at Station 12 in Liberty City in Miami, was literally a fence separated from my middle school. I literally went to middle school right next to the fire station. I drove my bike as a kid around a lot of the fire stations. So that was a great thing to be able to work in a community you grew up in, the schools you went to, etc. So I worked my way up through the organization. I became a lieutenant after 5 years, a captain after 10, a battalion chief after 15 years. And I kept growing and learning. But the entire time, I was always working off duty at the community college. So I worked at Miami-Dade Community College, 4 campuses, the medical campus, the fire academy, the police academy, and then general studies academy. So I was able to work in all of these different areas and just have this passion for training. So back in 1998 and 99, I took my promotional exams and I scored #1 on the exam in 1998, but I didn't get promoted for a battalion chief on an assessment center. I had to take the test a second time in 1999, and I was able and fortunate enough to score #1 a second time. But what that allowed me to really do is to really get into this, understand how this entire process works. And that's been my drive, Larry, is to help people develop, help people challenge the process, but to develop themselves first. And that's why I think what the things I talk about in the book, like you said, the first 5 chapters don't even hardly talk about the assessment center process. They talk about things like developing a village of people to help you prepare, growing mentors, finding the right resources. One of the quotes that I have in the book is from some doctors that deal with PhDs that deal with assessment centers, and they say that never try to snow the assessors, never try to be something you're not. And that's why the entire first 5 chapters of the book is all about self-development. So I think you summed that up really, really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in 1999, I started my company, fireassessmentcenterprep.com, to train people to get promoted, to challenge the oral boards and the interviews. But the one thing that bothered me, it always just it was like nails on a chalkboard, is when people said, hey, just tell me what they want to hear. Tell me how to get promoted. And I said, we're not a good fit. We're not a good fit. If that's what you're in for, I'm not comfortable working with you, because my responsibility is, if you get in that right front seat, I want people to go, I'm confident of that man or that woman that's in that right front seat, the chief's car, whatever the position is. So that's kind of the whole premise that I wrote the book under. I tried to take what I've learned over the last, at the time that I started writing the book, 39 years in the fire service, 23 years of training people from all over the country for assessment centers, and I tried to tie that into the book. I like to show you how to do things on the test, but I got to make sure that you're ready to do the job first. And I think you summed that up really well earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And man, if I was writing a book on this same subject, I would start out the exact same way, since David and I are so rooted in the personal leadership message, and not so much a message. We just think it's a principle that should be followed, because I think it gives you quality and longevity for not only the firefighters you serve, but for you as a person, because you're constantly growing, because that's what you've trained yourself to do. Too many people pass the test. I remember being young in the fire service, and I didn't know how to quantify it, to put my finger on it, but I did know that for some reason, this person might have been my boss, but they weren't a good leader. They had the badge, but their leadership sucked, and I was just wasn't impressed. and which kind of was part of my motivation for even writing Glue. It was these little C's and little notes I took from just different leadership styles and realizing it could be a lot better, and also to keep me challenged and being better as well. I always start with number one first and then kind of walk it from there. And so you were talking about people you've helped around the country, and I noticed that we have a mutual friend, and he's one of your star students, which is Demond Lamont Sanford Simmons. So,
Yeah. Oh, I love him. You'd have to know us. You'd have to know the history. But whenever I talk to Demond or he talks to me, we start with, "Hey, you big dummy," and you'd have to know that history from Sanford and
yeah,
Son, which I
Sanford
grew up
Son,
watching
right.
that show with my dad. But
Yeah,
that's how Demond and I kind of hit it off. But he's
yeah,
one of the favorite people I've ever trained. He is just to me such a role model for what this book is about, and that's why I had to have a section in there about Demond, and I'm glad you brought him up.
yeah, yeah. He's we he and I we don't stay in touch as much as I want to, but every time we see each other, it's all love, and he's an example of a lot of things I'd like to continue to do. I know he's Dr. Demond Simmons now, and that's one of the things on my list to do. You know, heading toward the Masters this fall, and after the Masters, off to Dr. Larry Conley. So I want to be able to do some doctor stuff as well, but not so much that. I mean, it's a personal thing for me, but I just think the growth is going to make me do, and I'll be able to serve better. I think in that capacity, and not that you can't, but that's just a route I want to go, because for years I just had to put school on hold because I was, raising my children and things like that. But now they're gone and grown, so I'm like, why not finish what I started? So I finished the bachelor's, and now it's on to the master's, and then the PhD afterwards. And when I see people like Demond Simmons and a few other people I know who have went that route and achieved it. Dr. Dennis O'Neil, one of my favorite people to talk about. Um, People like that kind of that iron sharpens iron mentality. When you hang around people who really have achieved some great things personally and in the fire service, you tend to want to step your game up as well. And
I'd like to, if you don't mind, I know Demond doesn't mind because he gave me permission to write about it in the book. But do you think I could share a little story about Demond?
Sure.
All right. So Demond reaches out to me through my Fire Assessment Center prep company 4 years ago, and he's prepping for a battalion chief's test. And he's, hey, I want to know a little bit more about your program. I've heard about you. So we chat back and forth. But the immediate thing was, hey, do you realize that in Sanford and Son, the character named Lamont, his name was Demond? And he goes, well, by the way, my middle name is Lamont. And that's how I was named.
Yeah.
So we started trading back and forth all the jokes about the show and you big dummy and all the characters and Aunt Esther. And I mean, I watched that show as a little kid with my dad, sitting in the living room floor, and I had to get up to change the channels on the TV because we didn't have remote control in those days, right?
I understand.
To date us. So as we start prepping, I describe how the program works, and I says, well, the basic program will include two-hour sessions of coaching. He goes, oh, no, I want more coaching than that. That's not going to be sufficient. So I said, let's just start with that, and we'll see where we're at. So we run our 2 sessions, and I says, man, you are just spectacular. You are amazing. He goes, and I said, I don't think you need any more training. He says, sign me up for 2 more. And I go, listen, are you not listening to me?
Right.
And he goes, no, I heard you, Chief, but sign me up for 2 more. So we do the 2 more sessions, and then he says, I want 2 more. So finally, I put my foot down, and I says, no, that's it. I'm not going to train you anymore. So he says, can I train with your partner? And I go, man, what's it going to take for you to understand that you are at a very high level? So I put him in touch with my partner, Chief David Johns, with Fire Assessment Center Prep, and he signed up for the training. About 1 hour into a 2-hour block, my partner said, we're done. I'm refunding your fee. We're done.
Right.
So he tests for the battalion chief test. He scores number 1. He gets promoted, and the rest is sort of history, so to speak. And now he's a deputy chief. I think the last when I spoke to him recently, he's in charge of support services or logistics over there in the organization. but his fire chief also came from the Northeast. He's also a PhD, Chief Freeman.
Right.
So
Right.
there's a lot of great leadership in that agency. And he is one of my favorite students. And when I was out last year doing some in-person training in San Francisco, we actually met up. He drove over the bridge and he picked me up and took me out to dinner. So I'm so glad you brought him up. And that's why I put him in the book,
Yeah.
because he is what this book is all about.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
No, he's good, and his continued striving for excellence. Because, like you said, most people would say, "Good, I'm done," but he wanted to keep on sharpening that saw. We saw him last year. He sat in our GLUE personal leadership class because we taught out in Oakland last year, and he was one of the people instrumental in setting that up at the college. And so he sat in the class and participated, and was one of the great hosts for us out there. And of course, we know Chief Reggie Freeman as well. So it's a great cadre of excellence there, if you will. And
the key with those people too, I think, is their humility.
yes,
Because they're never one to tell you, hey, I've got a PhD, I've got this certification, that certification. Because like I quote a lot in my book, Dr. John Maxwell, one of my favorite leadership gurus, and I've read 25 of his books at least twice.
Wow.
And one of the things that Dr. Maxwell says is nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
So that's also, something I try to espouse and talk about family and balancing everything. And I know we've got your lovely mom on the show. And that's one of the things that I talk about in the book. I call it the village, of setting up your village of helpers. And, we've all studied for exams. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have studied for exams, how stressful it is, how much time you're trying to put in. And when you're in the middle of studying, your roof leaks, your toilet backs up, your car gets a flat tire, all of these other things that happen in life. And when things are going well in our life, we adjust, we adapt. We go to the tire store and we get a tire change. But when you're in the middle of studying, you're like, oh my gosh, this couldn't have been a worse time.
right.
Yeah.
So I talk about it, and that's why I'm so glad to have your mom on here, because I know how important it is. And I talk a lot about that in the book, and I call it the village and getting all of your helpers to help you.
Sure. No, you're right. It does take a village, and you need that support, because life doesn't just get on hold just because you're trying to study for a test. Like life don't say, "Well, I'm gonna chill," and then once you're done, I'm back at you. That's not how that works. So great stuff.
Good.
I like at the end of we just talked about how you go through the first 5 chapters just in mental and self preparation before you even get to the nuts and bolts of things. And I like how you ended chapter 5 where you said, "Today I will generate an achievable self development plan in order to increase my knowledge, skills, abilities, and personal characteristics long before the assessment center exam date is posted." Um, and it kind of reminds me, you said in the big way. One of the things I used to tell the guys from the St. Louis Fire Department, since I was there that long, is that your preparation for the test doesn't start when the hang sheet drops. It's already too late then. Once they post a hang sheet, you say, "Ooh, I better start studying." You're already behind the 8 ball. Your chance. I mean, you're lucky if you rank high enough, and some people do, but you don't want to bet your life on that. Just like I was telling people, you don't want to bet your life. You may win a lottery, but you don't want to live your life playing the lottery. You want to go to work every day and increase your chances of eating regularly and keeping the roof over your head. But so it's the same thing with this. Um, uh, with that being said, kind of tell us, when did it hit you, and maybe for our listeners, like some of the practices that you found yourself doing in this personal preparation before the hang sheet drop that you think was instrumental in making you as successful as you were when you did get to the nuts and bolts of the exam.
I think the biggest thing is, well, a few things, but I have a whole chapter dedicated to mentors and mentoring and trying to find those mentors. And you see people and you see the way they're respected, the way they conduct themselves. And I'm not even just talking on emergency scenes. I'm talking at training ground, day-to-day operations at the fire station, or when dealing with outside entities, external stakeholders. And you say to yourself, wow, I'd like to have what that person has.
Mm.
So I think a big thing is mentors. You mentioned earlier about FDIC, so I'm a big fan of attending these conferences whenever possible, whether they're a local conference being put on by a department in your area, or the mega show like we have in Indianapolis with 35,000 people attending. You're going to get something out of all of the shows.
Yeah.
And I remember a few years ago, I was presenting. I had a section I presented at FDIC, and I was done presenting. I was on cloud nine. I had a big group of people. I thought it went really well. I was just super, super stoked and super happy about it. And then I'm looking through the book trying to pick a session for myself. And here's where ego can get in the way.
Mm.
So I read a topic, but the presenter was a lieutenant. And I said to myself, man, I'm a chief. He's a lieutenant. What am I going to get out of this? Let me pick another one. But the topic was so good. It was about slicers and indirect fire attack and transitional fire attack, which was relatively new, 5, 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, Freddie, check your ego at the door. Go in the lesson. If you don't like it after 10 or 15 minutes, there'll be another one. You can walk out and go to another room. So I walked in, and within 5 minutes, I was mesmerized at what a great presentation it was. So I was so happy that I didn't let my ego get in the way, and I learned just an incredible amount of material there. So mentors, going to the conferences, and then always looking for ways to improve. So that is the premise that I kind of wrote the entire book on, is that you cannot demonstrate something on the test you don't already possess. So I want us to get good at our craft, good at our profession, and then find ways to get that across. Like you said, you've evaluated multiple tests with a clock running, under pressure, with a sterile environment. When we go to a fire scene, we can hear the alarm going off. We can see the smoke. We can see the look on people's faces. But on a test, you have just a screen that you're looking at. You may not get the feedback. So you have to kind of adapt what you do for real to the test setting. But you shouldn't do something on the test you wouldn't do for real.
Wow.
And that applies to your subordinates, which is your number one asset. Another big driver for me that drives me, and in chapter on subordinate counseling in the book, I actually dedicated the chapter to a firefighter that I worked with for many years in the city of Miami. And the reason I did is it was a firefighter suicide. So I talk a lot about our interpersonal skills, our interpersonal dynamics. I quoted over 40 different textbooks, both from the fire service, from outside the fire service. Some of the names are the familiar names like Chief Salka, Chief Lasky, Chief Ludwig that used to work there in St. Louis, a chief from Canada, Chief Carpluck. I quote Jason Hovelman. I quote a lot of different sources. And what I want people to do is to go for those sources, read those sources, attend those conferences. Because you just can't, in a 10-minute scenario in front of a panel, do something that you can't do for real.
Yeah. David might want to touch on our methodology when we do our class, and even that whole thing about how important that preparation is to prevent you from, not prevent, lessen the chances of maybe you ending up in the suicide thought or the actually executing that. So
we have in the class the Empower model, which if you take that model and internalize it, it improves a lot of your performance personally and professionally. Gives you a great balance of efficiency and effectiveness in your performance. But one of the things that it does, one of the elements is just that recharge element that helps you to, keep your mental, physical, spiritual, intellectual readiness at a level that where you can start to perceive any dips in that, any challenges that you may be having, where you can go and get yourself, sort of checked out or back to a state of readiness where you're not melting down or flaming out, But the other thing is it builds on some of those interpersonal interactions that you were talking about, Chief, where we're able to also be sensitive to the just the vibrations, if you will, for lack of a better term, of those people on our team, and you're able to kind of be there for them. And sometimes being there is nonverbal. Sometimes it's just a matter of being able to have a psychologically safe space where people know that they can come to you, talk about things, count on you, be a mentor, where you can be a mentor rather to them or vice versa. So that sort of interchange and exchange of energy of relationship is a thing that, like you said, not only helps with the test and what have you, but just helps with overall, personal and professional performance and fitness and readiness. And I think that one of the things we have a suicide based scenario in the class, and we try to tell people that it's really not a thing to say this is a cure, definite thing to stop suicides, but it is to say that how important listening is, how important understanding each other is, how important understanding yourself is, and doing these things in preparation mode before and hopefully to prevent any of these sorts of issues, because seismic challenges can come to us at any time in life, and it's unpredictable. Like you were saying about when you're taking the test, the test doesn't care that you got to also do these other things in life. So your study schedule doesn't care for that. Same for just life in general. So if you never know when those things are coming, that type of preparation and readiness we're talking about is for you to have a sort of baseline uh, way to, hopefully deal better. And so that's kind of, one of the things that we're working towards when we're in the class.
Yeah, one of the things that I incorporated in the book is one of our colleagues, so she'll be presenting at FDIC this year. She's presented before, which is Chief Dina Ali from the
Mm-hmm.
Raleigh Fire Department. Dina is pictured in the book. Actually, her picture's in the book on page 16. She's in chapter 2. Dina is one of my former students. I helped her prepare for company officer and for battalion chief, but she's very instrumental in this field, and she shares just an incredible amount of knowledge in this field about how to deal with these situations. But I think, Larry, David, one of the things you were talking about was that relationship where
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's having struggles feels comfortable speaking with you, but
Yeah.
that'll never exist if they don't trust you.
Right.
And that's one of the quotes I have in the book from General Colin Powell, is that the essence of leadership, which is a great speech that he gave at where he answered a question about what's the most important thing in leadership, and he said it's trust.
Mm-hmm.
So the personnel have to be able to trust you. Now, if they don't trust you, how are they going to feel comfortable sharing something
That's
so
right.
sensitive as
Exactly.
their behavioral or emotional issues?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's crucial that we look at it from that perspective, is that we have to establish these relationships. And one of the things that I like to talk about is leading versus managing.
Mm-hmm.
And I get frustrated when people use those terms interchangeably. And I always tell people that leadership, this is the way that I describe it, leadership is about people.
Mm-hmm.
Management is about processes. So
Wow.
very, very
That's
short
excellent.
definition. I'm sure
That's
we
good.
could spend days, and your lessons talk about a lot of that stuff, but that's the nuts and bolts. We lead people and we manage processes. But for test purposes and day-to-day purposes at the fire station or as an administrator, you have to lead and manage.
Yeah.
You
Mm-hmm.
can't do one or the other exclusively, but there's times for both. And I think that's one of the concepts that I tried to push in the book, is that, like Chief Frescuso says, if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead others.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I think his quote is, if the leader of one can one day lead many, but if you can't lead your one, you can't lead any.
Right.
So I quote Chief
Mm-hmm.
Frescuso in his book too, to step up and lead, because he's got so much good information in his book as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
that's
that's
true.
the efficiency effectiveness balance. You know what I mean? Like managing processes is a matter of efficiency, and doing that well will make you more efficient. But how effective are you when it comes to things, those intangibles, those things like the trust and things like that you build over time with people, and first with yourself, and then you build that through your relationships with others, to where now when you partner those two things together, the and I'm using performance level, but I'm just saying how good everything works for you in that sense just kind of grows exponentially.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
when I actually tell a story about Dina in the book, because when she reached out to me to prep for the battalion chief's test, she wasn't all that sure she was ready for it. She wasn't sure the timing was right. And then she started with, I have a great crew. And I says, Dina, with all due respect, they're a great crew because you're a great leader. Oh, come on, they're really great. And I says, yes, they are. And I said, Dina, how many of your crew transfers out periodically? She goes, oh, no, we've been together for years. And I think that's when the light bulb kind of went off. And then I said, well, listen, if you wait for the perfect time to say this is the perfect time to be a battalion chief, when is that going to be? It's really never going to be the perfect time. So, we went through that, we worked through that, and then sure enough, she put in for the test. She did a great job. She got promoted, and I stay in touch with her. She was one of the reviewers of my book, actually. She read it for me and proofread the book, so I'm very, very grateful for that. But the thing is now, by getting promoted, she's got a bigger net she can cast.
Yeah.
She can reach out to more people, contact more people, connect with more people. So that's kind of the premise I think, David, you were talking about, is being able to, establish those relationships and be able to connect with more people, because that's the essence of leadership, is being able to connect with people. But you definitely don't want them to follow you because of your title or because of your rank. And I think Larry talked about that earlier. And that having a badge, having 3 stripes, 3 bars, 3 trumpets, 3 bugles, none of that makes you a leader. The only thing that can make you a leader are your subordinates that are willing to lead,
Right.
and willing to be led, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you said one of the things you said is address yourselves and our actions to prepare and tackle the assessment center. And I think we just need I think we stay in the situation now where everyone has kind of succumbed to it a little bit. I don't want to blame it on generational. It's a lot of factors. I think we're become an instant society. You want to know some news, you just click your phone and pick up something right there. You don't have to be smart anymore. You just Google everything. I was telling my kids, well, if I was living in this era, I'd be a genius, because we had to read them heavy Encyclopedia Britannica.
Oh my gosh!
Elaine brought it and microfiche at the library and all that kind of. You had to put in work to get your work to do your work. So it's just now it's just things that are so much at your fingertips. But some processes don't really change. It's you still. It's like pastor that we said a long time ago used to say, you can't run from yourself, because no matter where you go, there you are. So I think your book, in making sure that message is take care of everything you need to, your deficiencies, your personal hang-ups, celebrate your victories, build on those victories, but address those hang-ups, because getting the gold badge is not going to make that go away. Matter of fact, it's probably going to make it worse, because the pressure that you ain't ready for is going to not only damage you, but it's probably going to damage your family, damage your crew that you serve, or if you have a superiority complex that I'm the chief, or I'm the captain, or I'm the lieutenant. If your people don't respect you and feel like you said, you create a safe environment, or that whole attitude where I'm here to serve and lead, is a whole different dynamic than I just, lead and manage and intimidate, whatever,
Right.
It's just not going to work long term.
Talking about that newer generation, that's one of the reasons in the book I listed a lot of the podcasts, both fire service podcasts and non-fire service podcasts, that I enjoy listening to, because a lot of people nowadays get their information from a podcast, and that way they can just download it. Then if they have a long commute or something, they can listen to it there. But one of the other things I tried to do is share current date information that at some point may be outdated, but I also shared the legacy. So you talked about the unfortunate passing away of Bobby Halton, all he did for FDIC, but I also talked in the book about Chief Alan Brunacini, and I shared about his customer service book. I had the pleasure of meeting Chief Brunacini on multiple occasions. So obviously his sons are carrying on that legacy with the Blue Card program. So, I mentioned that in the book as a resource. We lost another fire service legend, Dr. Harry Carter, that contributed tremendously to the fire service. So I listed from Harry Carter's book a size up system that he has, an 8-step process to size up. So what I tried to do in the book when it came to a lot of these things is say, hey, look, this is a system. For instance, coal was wealth. For instance, the 8-step size up. In the Buonacini Blue Card program, you have what they call FPOD-P, right? So what are the facts? What's the probability? What's my own situation? Let's make a decision and let's implement a plan. So what I tell my students in the book and the students that David and I train in our assessment center training is, I can give you a system, but can you apply it under pressure on an unknown situation with a clock running? Because if I tell you you've got a structure fire in a taxpayer with people hanging out the window on the Charlie side, and I give you an hour, yeah, you could come up with all the great scenario. But what if I tell you, hey, you got 30 seconds to tell me what you're going to do? So that's where you can't fake the assessors, like you said earlier, that you know right away who's prepared and who's not.
Yeah, most definitely. And like I said, when I was a fire captain for over 13 years before I got the deputy chief job, and a lot of times we were first in our engine company or truck company, you want to call it. It went from engine to truck because they changed how you address what the quint was, but a lot of times it didn't change the demographics of being first into a lot of fires. And like I said, you had to make that decision right now. Your life safety, you had buildings. A lot of times we showed up, you might have a vacant building that's impinging on occupied exposure. How do you address that? You showed up one day, there was a motel on fire, and the fire got up into the attic space, and there was, it ran the whole length of the 1-story hill, which means you had all this void space. So once the fire got up in there, it just ran it. And I said, hey, this is going places, and we need a second alarm right now. And historically, a captain, unless you was riding the seat in the chief's buggy, you wasn't, I won't say you weren't authorized to do it. You definitely are authorized to do whatever's best. But what I'm saying, recognizing that kind of stuff, if it was an assessment test, I definitely would call it on the scene too, so we can get ahead of this thing. Because once that fire gets up in that space and starts traveling in all that void space, everybody's in danger. So when we got up there, that was able to get enough resources to the scene, making those trench cuts, getting ahead of the fire, and it saved a lot of that building and probably saved a lot of lives. Because of the teamwork of a lot of people on the scene who knew what they were doing, and under that type of pressure, wasn't standing there with their mouth open like, this really looks bad. They really to address.
You talked earlier about that entire team, and in reality, sometimes as firefighters and paramedics and people out in the field, we tend to think of ourselves as a team. But what if the dispatcher doesn't pick up the phone and properly process the call? What if the shop mechanic didn't tune up the vehicle correctly and the vehicle doesn't start? So what if the logistics people didn't have the right gear and you don't have a hood and you wind up getting burned? So there's just so many more people to the team, and that's the team concept that I like to always espouse, is that it takes everybody to make it work. And unfortunately, a friend of mine just lost his father a couple of weeks ago. And when he called EMS, the fire department in a local jurisdiction down here, which I won't name, it took him 13 and a half minutes to arrive, and the fire station is 10 blocks from his house. So there was some issues with dispatch. So no matter what, the paramedics showed up and the fire crew that showed up, the BLS and ALS crews that showed up, so much time had elapsed that who knows if maybe something could have been done earlier, an intervention could have been done earlier. But that's important that we look at everything holistically. And especially as you move up the organization, remember that it's not just the firefighters out there that respond when the bell rings. It's all the other people that make the bell ring.
Yeah, we had a rescue years ago where we rescued, I don't know, I got the award downstairs in the basement somewhere. I got to start putting this stuff up. A lot of awards. Like we got this company awards, like that. I need to do it just to have a record of some of it. But anyway, we got the award, and we rescued multiple people out of this multi-family dwelling. And so the government, we got like a governor's award for it, our battalion, and and the medic units that were on the scene. But one of the things I was glad that Chief Jenkinson of the St. Louis Fire Department did is that the dispatchers got awards too,
Mm-hmm.
for that, and because they were on point that night with getting as much accurate information as they could with frantic people calling. We got there, knew what to do, and it all started with how well the dispatchers got us out the door and made those rescues. And it was challenging because it was it was all kind of big people, small people, little kids, elderly, the whole nine. And so for us to do it that coordinated that well, it was just a perfect storm. But like you said, it all started with the dispatchers. It started with the well-trained firefighters on the scene. It started with the vision and the direction of the battalion chiefs on the scene. It started with the timely arrival of the medic units, knowing what to do, getting them in the back, making quick assessments, stabilizing vitals, and getting them to the hospital in a timely manner. So it was all one big team effort that led to all those lives being saved that did challenging multi-family dwelling. So you're absolutely right about that. It takes a village on the fire scene as well.
Yep.
One of the things, Chief, that we talk about, and the reason we include our dear mother, Miss Elaine, in the whole conversation is because she really believes in that recharge, wind down, taking that time to rest. Like, we're intentional about training, we're intentional about studying, we're intentional about networking, we're intentional about all that kind of stuff. But a lot of times, this sleep when you're dead mentality can burn you out before you can really maximize everything that you're chasing. You're chasing and chasing and chasing. And then, but if you're not intentional about your rest and your recharge, you can burn yourself out. So
So
Elaine,
speak.
why don't you kind of touch on that, because I know that's something that is very dear to you and something that she has shown me. I don't do as well as I should, but but she has shown me, and also has shown a lot of our few firefighters and a lot of our dispatchers as well. When we brought up dispatchers, I thought about how many dispatchers that call her mom and really look to her to Miss Elaine, tell me about rest. So where it fits into this equation, Miss Elaine.
Well, no, one of the things that I was listening to, and we kind of touching on the leadership concept, is you always think of a leader being in charge of everybody else and thinking of everybody else but themselves. So it really should start with me, myself, and I, because the better care you take of yourself, better you're going to perform, but the better care you'll take of people that are under you in terms of your positions and things like that. And sometimes when I've listened to different stories about firefighters at the fire scene, everything is not going just according to the exact way that you might have learned how to tackle that problem in your training. Sometimes you might have to become a little innovative, but you always have to be thinking on your feet. But you think on your feet better when sometimes you're resting, lying down, and taking care of yourself when you're not on duty. And I found that through the years that almost all the professions, but especially first responders, they kind of tend to neglect themselves when they're off duty. And so my thing became trying to help people in general, but especially first responders, see that the better you take care of you when you're not working, the more alert and awake and able to do your job at your best is when you're well rested and when you've taken care of yourself. Because I found out that on those long off days, that was your rip and run time. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you already been ripping and running, chasing, fires and and responding to all kinds of calls. So when you're on your off days, you really want to make sure you take some time out to truly, regroup and just rest.
Mhm.
I have an acronym for rest, and it's called replenish every step taken. And so, but especially first responders, they take a lot of steps out there on the job. But when they come home, sometimes they keep running,
Mhm.
never,
Mm-hmm.
never really shut it down and just take time out to regroup and replenish. So
Mhm.
I always wanted to interject that a little bit because it is a necessity to take care of you as best you can too.
Mhm.
One time I heard a statistic about firefighters having a high suicide rate and succumbing to other problems as far as their health was concerned. And a lot of the problems was due to just not taking care of you. So you're
Mm-hmm.
focused on taking care of everybody else, but you got to include you into the
Mhm.
equation as well. So,
Yeah,
Mhm.
I actually, Elaine, you bring up a very good point. In
hmm
the book, I actually have about 2.5 pages that all talk about sleep and
Mm.
recommendations about how to sleep and different tools and different steps to
hmm
help us. Because
hmm
I always
hmm
said that in the fire service, and I'm sure you can attest, that you sleep with one eye open, right?
yes,
You
Mm-hmm.
never actually sleep
yes,
Right.
because you're always waiting for the
hmm
next bell to hit, the next tones
yes,
to go off. So you never really get fully rested.
that's
And
right.
I thought that was a big component to the studying as well. And
hmm
I actually write in the book that if you have a bad shift and you're up all night running calls, go home and go to sleep.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
And
see,
then you could
that,
study that
Mm-hmm.
afternoon.
Mhm.
Instead of getting
absolutely.
that
Mm-hmm.
mindset that, oh gosh, no, Larry's studying, David's studying, I got to study, right?
hmm
And
Yeah.
then you force yourself and it's really not productive.
Mhm.
And
So
Mm-hmm.
like,
I actually dedicated a whole section to that, and I thank you for sharing that, Elaine, about the importance of getting that rest and replenishing every step. I like that acronym you have.
Mhm. Mhm. And because a lot of
and the
times,
other,
and that's another reason we have to work hard to manage our personal leadership is
hmm
because if you like a lot
yes,
of us, myself included, I know a lot of firefighters, they got major jobs on their day off.
hmm
I work
Mm-hmm.
at the firehouse, but when I get off, I got this big construction job or I cut lawns or they do a lot of work
hmm
and they kind of downplay their time at the firehouse. I remember
hmm
Chief Jenkinson saying one time, if you're at the store and somebody hears two firefighters talking, they'll think all you do is sleep at the firehouse because
hmm
you
Mm-hmm.
didn't fire. What most firefighters would say, "Well, how was your shift?" Uh, we had 10 calls, but it wasn't
hmm
because it wasn't a fire. But if
hmm
you 10 calls and you was up 4 times after midnight,
hmm
Mm-hmm.
that deprives your sleep. Those are
Absolutely.
these little times of not resting, not recharging, and things like that can contribute. So you couple that with going to cut the 50 lawns you got to cut or the construction you got to cut to do, and then you doing it because maybe you're deep in debt by you had to buy that boat right now, or you had to do just a lot of things that you could pile on because being at the firehouse you shift your mindset into only work 10 days a month or however many days you work. And since you qualify that as almost like a part-time job in a sense,
hmm
but you don't realize that Miss Elaine used to tell me when I was young in the service, they give you those days off for a reason.
right.
So some
Mm-hmm.
of those days need to be
hmm
dedicated to resting and replenishing so you can be there for the long haul. But the reason I brought it up is because imagine trying to study
hmm
for a promotional exam with the demand that you talk about in the book in order to keep up with, um, climbing past people, but you're depleted because you just got through
mm
working your second job and
Yeah.
you got, things going on at home, whether how well you manage that. And then I got to study too, and you got those
hmm
pressures as well. So all of that kind of stuff can contribute to insidiously taking the quality of life away. What do you think about that, Chief?
One
I share a
can right
personal.
quick.
Well, I'm gonna let Elaine talk, and then I have a little story I'll share about
I'm
that.
I'm sorry. But one of the things I wanted to say too, I thought something that I always thought it was kind of interesting that because oftentimes firefighters sleep on the, when they're in the firehouse, when there's nothing going on. But that kind of sleep is not typically as restful as the kind that when you are off work altogether. And the other thing was when the bell goes off or the alarm goes off, you got to wake up running. You can't stretch and, like you would if you were going taking a sleep at home or waking up in the morning and you're at home. You got to be at the ready. And you got how many minutes to get everything ready so you can get going?
Mhm.
I mean, it's it's a certain amount of minutes you're supposed to have everything to be up and ready to get out there and go take care of whatever the emergency is. So even that kind of sleep is not particularly restful sleep because you have to always be waking up at the ready. And so that's not, it's better than nothing, but it's not restful, replenishing sleep.
Mhm.
Yep, and and during the process, and I guess throughout our entire career, exercise is very important. As we know, cancer is a big threat, but
Mm-hmm.
cardiac is a big threat for us as well. So I share a story in the book of when I was studying. This is back in 1987. I was studying for my lieutenant's test. That exam was all written. Everybody knows the drill: 10 different books and manuals and SOPs and all that kind of stuff. So I was doing 8 to 10 hours a day, 8 to 10 hours a day, which 8 hours of studying is really about 16 hours of the day. Because when I say
Mm-hmm.
8 hours of studying, I'm talking 8 hours in the book. So this is going on for months. So the last 6 weeks before the exam, I still remember the date. It was December 10th, 1987. That was the date of our lieutenant's exam. I had taken 6 weeks off. I had swapped shifts and all my vacation. I had loaded all my time. So I didn't work for 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I owed a lot of shift swaps I had to pay back. But the day of the exam, we got out of the exam about 3 in the afternoon, and it was my shift day. So I went back to the fire station. I take my personal key, open my locker. I grab a pair of pants, and they would not fit. I closed the locker and I checked, is this really my locker? And yeah, that's my wife's picture. That's my kid's picture. This is my locker. So my clothes wouldn't fit. And luckily in that era, we could wear jumpsuits. So the only thing that I had that would fit was a jumpsuit. And then I had to get a slip to get new uniforms. I had to go get new uniforms. And I said to myself, that'll never happen to me again the next time I study. So I think that's very important. And we're talking about healthy pursuits and we talk about the stressors. So I just read an article recently that says the average person will have 2 or 3 major traumatic events in their life. But a firefighter EMS worker might have 180 over the course of
Yes.
their
Oh my
career that
goodness.
they're privy to, that they're witness to.
Mm.
So see the ratio there, how incredible it is. So
Mm.
one of the things that I'd like to espouse is working out. And I'm a big CrossFit guy. I go to CrossFit today. I'm retired. I can do whatever I want. I run my own business. I run my own hours. I go to CrossFit at 6:15 every morning. And I
Bless
tell
your heart.
people there, yeah, I'm a little lazy. I only go 5 days a week.
Mhm.
And they just start laughing. What do you mean you're here every day? And I'm like, yeah, but that's how I start my day.
Mm-hmm.
And that 1 hour is just such a disconnect. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm the oldest person there. The young kids are playing music that I never heard of, and artists that I never heard of, and techno music, and all sorts of different music. And to me, it's just such an incredible stress relief. So I
Mhm.
think that even in the middle of your studying process, and I actually wrote about it in the book, you've
Mm-hmm.
got to go and do whatever it is you like to do.
Yeah.
You got to factor that in. Otherwise, you're not managing your time well.
Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
very true.
Absolutely.
It keeps that holistic um, um, mentality in place, so you're just not
Mm-hmm.
so you don't burn out. I mean, you don't want to
About
be
balance.
so study. Yeah, you don't
That's
want to be studied so much. Now, of course, some of the study is going to require you to be a little unbalanced to
Mm-hmm.
get to balance, but even that should be managed a lot better than just totally
Mm-hmm.
being. I mean, okay, you made number one on the test, good, but like you said, I done gained weight, I lost my
Mm-hmm.
flesh, I done, lost my mind, but at least I'm promoted. See, it
yeah, but what?
kind of remind me of those commercials. Now they talk about you want to stop anxiety,
One.
no problem. We got
Right.
medicine for you. but maybe cause nosebleed, blindness, hair loss,
Hmm.
hair loss,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
anal leakage, whatever.
Hmm.
You know. But at least I don't have anxiety.
Right.
So,
But what's funny is some of those medicines cause anxiety. You know what I
right,
mean?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
when it's some of the side effects is anxiety. So it's
Oh
helping
my
me
God.
for anxiety.
right, right, right,
But
Oh
right.
my
Oh,
gosh.
but the
David,
other
then another one say may cause suicidal thoughts. I'm like,
right,
what kind of medicine is
Well,
this?
why
Yeah.
would I take yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
But I mean,
Hmm.
it is important though, still, even with knowing that you may have that
Hmm.
sort of um concentrated time of studying or whatever that can tax you a little bit extra, that's all the more reason to then implement something like what Chief is saying with saying, this hour though a day, if I
Hmm.
can help it, is going to be
Hmm.
my base recharge time.
Hmm.
And if I
Hmm.
keep that consistency, sometimes, can just keep you grounded enough to where even when you have to swing heavy for that studying or whatever it is, the job
Hmm.
even, it helps to keep you, on that even keel some. So,
Mhm. I was thinking too that another thing that we can all understand too. Excuse me, I had to kind of move to charge this back up. Um,
Speaking of recharge.
yeah, speaking of recharge, even
yeah, I
our
was about to
computer.
say, yeah, yeah.
But what I was going to say is that maybe one of your first lessons in management and leadership, it was we were talking about if you can't lead yourself. Maybe one of the things that you can do as a lesson is, hey, I'm going to lead myself right now. So just like you
Hmm.
Hmm.
do at work, one of your management jobs might be
Hmm.
scheduling. One of your management jobs might be um, um,
Hmm.
do a training that's going to take all day. How would you,
Hmm.
prioritize and put those things in place? So you could do that for self. You know,
Hmm.
Hmm.
uh, get up in the morning from this hour. This hour is stretching and meditation. From this hour, I'm gonna go get my exercise in, like Chief Freddie does. The next hour I come back, going to study from this hour strictly. I mean, no interruptions, no TVs in the background on them,
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
constantly focus on I'm going to give this study in 100%. And then after
Hmm.
that, hey, go do something you really like to do to balance that out, or go spend time with your family or whatever, even
Hmm.
manage what you eat. My meals are going to look like this and whatever. And then I'm going to spend time if you're married or your spouse, we're going to spend intentional about that quality time of spending time and addressing that. If they understand what you're going through, they understand it has to be fall maybe somewhere in those parameters of management. And then get in a good habit of already managing. You manage, you're successful at passing a test, but you've also had maybe some little intrinsic things that show that, hey, I can manage. And since you manage
Hmm.
Hmm.
yourself well, now when you pass the test and manage others, you've already had a crash course. You kind of leverage your time. You made every step um, better just by not only how you pass the test, but how you manage yourself. And now you can
Hmm.
use that as an example to manage others, or as Chief Freddie has done, you know, use it as a guideline to for success in the test. So it's not just about burning yourself out going through these processes. Manage your time along the way so you can be whole when you do get that job.
Yeah, like you
One of
said
the things.
earlier, if you see your name on the
Hmm.
list and you're number one on the list, you say, "Hey, Larry Conley's number one on the list," but
Hmm.
your kids are not talking to you, or your wife's upset at you, leads to a divorce or something, or then it really wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
in my case,
Hmm.
I wouldn't be as successful as the success that I was able to achieve without my wife, because my wife
Mhm.
was always there to support me.
Hmm.
4 different promotion exams. So
Mhm.
Hmm.
we all know the pressure when you're studying everything that's going on. And my earlier exams, that lieutenant exam, my captain's exam, little kids at home at the time, and it's just a big challenge. So if you don't unwind and find healthy ways to unwind, what tends to
Hmm.
happen?
Yep.
You may find
Mhm.
unhealthy ways to
Yep.
unwind. And I
Mhm.
really tried to talk a lot about that in the book. Like you said, the first part of the book, it has nothing to do with the assessment center. It just has to do about us.
Mhm.
So I think that's a great point you brought up there.
Mhm. Yeah, lay that foundation. If you get that foundation, we all know, principally speaking, Dave and I always try to speak principally. When you principally got that foundation together, however it looks, whether you do or you build in a house or whatever you do, that foundation is critical. David is a black belt in some deadly karate thing he does, and but his core, he talks about that all the time. Where David used to be so successful with karate, and our other brother who knew karate and was good at it, but his core was just, I just want to beat people up, So it didn't always work out for him too well because his core was out of place. But David went full spiritual, knows Japanese,
Mhm.
and know all the spiritual things to go along with it. Built a strong foundation. Every
Mhm.
time he works out, it's with a core, inside out core building technique. So by the time he's ready to really fight, when he used to compete back in the day. Um, he was a movable force on the mat because people were trying to come at him with all this fancy stuff. And he just principally beat the snot out of them with very few moves because he was spiritually in tune. His foundation was strong. And his
Mhm.
core was so
Mm.
strong. They'll kick him in the leg and break their leg kicking him, because his core,
Mhm.
his foundation was so strong. So principally, that foundation is really, really important.
One of the things I was going to mention too is the fact that firefighters, and especially, have more days, quote unquote, days off than maybe the average person who works, 5 days a week and off on the weekends or something like that, or work 5 days and off 2 days. But what I when Chris started, I call the Larry Chris, um, started working, it dawned on me that you're working 24 hours though when you're at work. So it's not like you're
Mhm.
working 8 hours and coming home in the evening even. So you're at work for a long period of time. And then when you come home, you have these uh, so many off days, more so than the average person thinks that that you have.
Mm,
Because, but that's because you've already worked almost a week, working those
Mhm.
24-hour shifts. So
Mhm.
it's not like you're working for 3 or 4 8-hour shifts or something. So by you coming home, and then when you are at work, you have to be at the ready. No matter if you do get to go to sleep, you still have
mm,
to be at the ready when you
mm,
wake up. But when you come home and you do have those extended days off, it should be paramount. Number one thing to do is to get some real serious rest on those days that you don't have to go to work.
mm,
And so, but sometimes they get filled up with other activities or another job or something else other than just really taking time to rest. And
mm,
when you're doing that over and over again, and after a while, you may stop and do what I just said, but you're exhausted. And so now trying to rest from the point of, because you're exhausted, your rest won't even be that beneficial.
mm,
And so you have to just want to pace yourself. Sometimes you can't help it, and some things happen that are unforeseen. But as much time as you can manage for yourself, you need to get some restful, peaceful sleep and
mm,
some restful, just time period, even if you're not asleep, because of the intensity of your work and the kind of work that you do when you are at work. So
mm.
it's almost like it was a little Jedi mind trick that you were working what two shifts, 2 days, but
Three.
you those were
3.
two 24-hour days
Mm, yeah.
or
Mhm.
something like that. Don't know
Mm,
remember exactly how it goes, but I was just saying. But when you're off, you should have at least one day, and even more so, but one day that you just don't do anything and just chill out.
mm. It's
Yeah, as a
easier
matter of
said
fact,
than done.
it's mandated when you come back from an urban search and rescue USAR deployment. They mandate a 72-hour period. when you come
Mm-hmm.
back. And sometimes, you, well, I don't really need it. Well, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you do.
Yeah, you do.
Yep.
Yep.
No,
Chief
that's
You do.
Fernandez, let me ask you though. We've been talking a lot about, what basically is the principle of prioritizing yourself, and where academically that seems like a no-brainer. What are some things that the person who doesn't necessarily think like this can do, whether they're trying to study for a test or whether it's just about the job, to start prioritizing themselves to where they would be doing some of these things to take care of themselves in a way that maximizes the impact of what it is they want to do, and how and their impact on it. Obviously, getting rest and those things are things that should be done, but they're easier said than done. So, what are some things in your opinion that a person can do to start prioritizing themselves to be better for others?
Well, I think, an important thing is to find healthy, natural pursuits. So I have one that most people are probably going to hear it and go, man, you're crazy again. So one of the things I love to do is yard work. I cut my own grass.
Hmm.
People say, come on, man, you could afford to hire your yard crew.
What
I
what
said,
what what else, Chief? That's a sensitive area for me and Larry. What else do you? What else you got?
No, you
well,
go. You asked the question, so let him talk.
yeah, you got to listen to the answer. So, and here in South Florida where I live, it's not unusual for the temperature to be 90, 95 degrees, which doesn't sound that
Hmm.
hot. It may get hotter in other parts of the country, but our humidity is at 90%.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So you'll step outside and it feels like somebody hit you with a bucket of water. Not that I condone buckets of water from a fire station roof, but it
Hmm.
feels that way. So I think it's just so crucial that we are not the Energizer bunny. So if you see that commercial with the bunny and the battery never runs out, well, we have a battery, and it's a spiritual battery, an emotional battery, an intellectual battery, and there's only
Mm-hmm.
so much we can handle. Now, I want to be make an admission here. I know all of these things. I understand all of these things. I believe in these things, but I'm not always successful in achieving them myself.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
There's times where I realize, hey, I've worked 14 days in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And then my wife will say, hey, you've been training a customer every day for the last 2 weeks. And I go, yeah, but it's so much fun. I enjoy it. The people are getting so much out of it. And she says, yeah, but what about you? So it's
Hmm.
Yeah.
that village again, somebody to
Mm-hmm.
remind you, hey, David, you're overdoing it. You've worked this many days. You've had this many trips. Hey, Larry, you haven't gone out with your wife somewhere. You haven't gone to see a movie. So it's that work-life balance that I think we have to have, because if we're all work, at some point we hit diminishing return. We're just not effective
Hmm.
anymore. And the same thing applies to your studying. I have students that I tell them, hey, take a break. And they're, no, I can't take a break. I say, well, all I can do is make a suggestion.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
Dave, you don't have to cut your grass, so don't worry about
All right. Okay.
it.
All right. All right.
But
I was about to say
I
that.
feel, yeah, I cut mine yesterday. I still get a kick out. I throw my headphones on and throw my favorite soundtrack, cutting grass soundtrack, and um, and I get out there and doing like you said. I got a lot of neighbors who the lawn people show up with their trailers and they jump off and actually they're done with the grass. I'm still out there because I'm a perfectionist with it. It got to look like Augusta golf course grass by the time I'm done with it. And then we got David don't want to cut grass because um, David is still, and I agree with him. We still suffer from
Watch it.
PTSD
Watch
from my
it.
grandma.
PTSD.
And my
Yeah.
grandmother used to make us get out there. I don't know if you remember,
Fools.
but before uh, head edgers, weed whackers, you had those clips where you had to like squeeze your hand and clip. That
Yeah. Yes.
we were weed whackers around the fence with that. And you
Hmm.
want to talk about? I think we invented carpal tunnel syndrome with that
I
because
know that's right. Yeah.
people
Mine.
shake
Mine.
their hands and say, "Boy, your kid's got a strong grip." You're like, "That's good."
mi- Mine was more
Had a nice
sergeant
looking
tunnel.
yard though.
Yeah, yeah,
Mine was
yeah.
more
So
sergeant tunnel syndrome. It was so bad. It was
yeah,
elevated beyond a corporal. It was sergeant tunnel
yeah,
syndrome.
yeah.
But
So
yes, I don't want to do the yard. I almost gave you book back right there, Chief. I don't know. but but
but
no, that's I gotta bust Larry out too. One of the reasons he stays out there doing his yard so long too is because he's got some senior citizen fan, some ladies that like to watch him. They put some music on him. Tell him to take his shirt off while he's out there cutting the grass. So whatever you got to do to pay the mortgage, buddy.
Right.
Now we
They
know the
do.
backstory. It's always
They
good to
do.
know the
Right.
backstory.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
They
Right.
do come to the door. I don't know why they always come to the door when I'm
Yeah.
outside, but I don't know.
Here you
Right.
go.
Right. It is.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
say
Mm-hmm.
he wants to cut the grass. They want him to shake his. Well, anyway, whatever.
Hey.
Watch it.
Hey.
Watch it.
But yeah.
Mm-mm.
But anyway, you got any more things you want to talk about in your book, Chief, before we wrap it up?
No, I just want to really share how passionate I am about this subject, how passionate I am about career development. You know, the fire service is something that gives so much back to us. It helps us provide for our families the tangible benefits of it, but we give so much to our citizens. And I want to make sure that we push that. You know, the only reason we exist, and my fire chief, Maurice Kemp, who I talk about in the book on the chapter about mentoring, Chief Kemp at every award ceremony, graduation ceremony, retirement ceremony, I don't care what the ceremony was, Chief Kemp would always say, we're here for one reason and one reason only, and that's to serve the citizens. There's no
Yeah.
other reason for us to exist. So that's kind of what drove me here, and it drives me and my partner David in our training business is that we want to, and you mentioned earlier in our mission statement, notice the way it's written. It's develop those knowledge, skills, and abilities, and then demonstrate them. So that's the whole mindset. And when we partnered up to train together, that was the premise that we wanted to work under, is that always prepare yourself. So in the
Yes.
book, I say that in quite a few occasions in the book, you cannot demonstrate something you don't already possess. So that's kind of what I want to leave the listeners with, is that's what this book is all about. It's about developing, growing yourself, then demonstrating it on the test. But more importantly, once you get promoted and you're in that right front seat, you're in the chief's car, you're at the headquarters, that people so say, wow, that person knows how to do the job. That person knows how to lead personnel. He knows how to lead men and women, but he also knows the nuts and bolts. We have to be technically proficient. We have to know how to tie our knots and hoist our tools and advance our lines, make a budget, schedule training for the battalion, whatever it is. But to me, that part is kind of easier than the part about managing the people
Yeah.
and managing yourself. That's where the challenges come. And that's kind of what the book has really tried to summarize. I've tried to share what I've learned over the last 40 years in the fire service. You know, the last 22, 23 years before I wrote the book of training people, I learned something every single training session. And I'm sure you guys will share with that when you do your leadership training. There's always something you pick up from the audience.
Definitely.
Like I shared that story at FDIC. I've never gone to a conference at FDIC that I didn't pick something up, that I didn't come back energized. And I wanted to kind of push that in the book too, that I hope this book energizes the readers to do more, to put in that a little bit of extra time, and to remember that it's not about you, it's about them.
Right. Definitely.
What's the name of your book again?
It's Fire Assessment Center 360. So in the fire service, we talk a lot about a 360 when we get to a scene. So I tried to use that as an analogy of trying to look at this procedure from multiple angles. I teach what the raters look for. I teach what you should look for. I talk about different testing companies, the different variations in testing and so forth. But then the second part of the subtitle is Climb Past Your Competition. And there's one more story I share in the book. I had a captain, when I first got promoted to battalion chief, I was a captain that was at one of my stations. He wasn't successfully in getting promoted. And he comes in and he goes, hey, Chief Freddie, you know, you did a great job on the task. You know, can you help me? And I said, absolutely. We're going to start today. And I stood up and I said, sit here. And he looks at me like, are you crazy? And I go, yeah, we have to prepare today. He goes, but the test is 2 years from now. I said, yeah, and sit in the seat right now.
Right.
And I said, you're doing the lineup today. You're going to balance the battalion out and move all the personnel around. He goes, oh, no, but I got to go to run my station. I said, well, pick another day. And you're going to come in here. So, you know, I shared that story in the book as well to say that, like you said earlier, when they hang the announcement for the test, you're months late, you're years late if that's when you start preparing.
Wow.
No, that's a great, and like I said, it all sounds fun to your buddies in the seat, and that's in the seat. This how it feels. So you better start getting
Hmm.
used to it now, so it won't be such a shock,
Mm,
And somebody told me something a long time ago too, is that when you go in there to do the assessment, I don't know if this is still, I know it was told to me a long time ago, so this is still the latest practice, but try not to go in with, I am a, let's say you're a captain trying to take a battalion chief's test. I'm just a captain trying to be a good. You got to walk in there already with the mindset, I am a battalion chief, and this is what I.
Hmm.
And when you walk in, when I've been an assessor and somebody walks in with that type of swag, they're gonna have to say something really, really stupid for me not to believe in them because I'm leaned in with their
mm,
confidence. I'm leaned in with their how they chronologically and logically put systems together and how can they talk with their eye contact and their voice inflection and just to seem like they're talking about something they're masters at. That
mm,
confidence comes with not only studying the material, but imagining yourself in that place already, to see it before you be it type of mentality.
I even
mm,
go far as further on that, that whenever I do in-person training, we just got back from doing in-person training in Houston. Whenever they introduce themselves, they have to introduce themselves by the rank they're aspiring for.
Mm-hmm.
mm,
And then
Yes.
just last week, I was coaching some police officers from city of Miami Beach, and they're going for lieutenant. So on Zoom, their title was Sergeant, so and so.
Mm-hmm.
And when
mm,
they logged in, I said, "Hey, we have to do something with your title." And they're like, "Whoa, what's your problem?" I said, "Yeah, it says Sergeant. Are we going for lieutenant?" So,
mm.
hey, change it to lieutenant now and
Yep.
visualize the future, visualize the
Hmm.
success,
Yeah,
and then it'll
that's
Mm-hmm.
be more
good.
likely to occur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we go to, you all have heard of Carl Holmes EDI, Executive Development Institute.
I actually had Carl Holmes when I was a young lieutenant in the early 80s. He came to Miami and he trained us in person. And he
Right.
had a
Wow.
Hmm.
profound impact on me. He was a large man, tall man,
Yes.
very eloquent speaker,
Yep.
but very down to earth speaker at the
Yep.
same time. So
Mm-hmm.
he was like, and I'm going to date us here, but like the old E.F. Hutton commercials, right? When E.F.
Mm-hmm.
Hutton talks,
He
people listen.
listened. Yeah.
Well, when he spoke, you listen.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Carl
he had
Holmes.
such an impact on how many thousands of people in the fire service.
I have the pleasure, probably last maybe 8 years now, of going and teach our leadership program at the Carl Holmes EDI in New Orleans, and David and I are going back this year. But it's such a great experience and such a great energy there with everybody aspiring to, be ranking up, and also the stuff that you learn from executive decisions and leadership and how to take a test and things of that sort. But the reason I brought it up is because that's how they address everyone down there. I don't care what rank you are, they
Mm,
call you chief. Hey chief,
mm.
how you doing? You can come down there. You
Wow.
just been on the job 2 years, and they
They call
already
you
call you
chief.
chief because they're
Mm,
trying to plant that seed in your mind. So I always like that atmosphere when I was there, that everybody
mm.
is chief, because that's what we're trying to get you to.
And he's
It's
another
things
legend we
that be
lost in the
not as
fire
though
service
they
that had
were.
such an impact.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he was. Like I said, I had the pleasure of knowing him, and I wish I had
Mm-hmm.
known him back. In the heyday when he was really out, because I heard he was something else. But he was something else is, just being down there, just, he ride around that golf court and he got them cigarettes and, and and like I say, he talks, he holding class wherever he is. He's sitting on that golf
Mm,
court and you
mm,
see just a bunch of people standing around him and he kicking knowledge. And you like, man, this dude, if he kicking knowledge right now, at this age when he's like, help me out this golf course. You can imagine how he was
Hmm.
when he was,
yeah.
just in his hey. And like
Mm,
yourself, when I talked to different people about him who had the pleasure of being trained about him when he was, traveling and teaching even before EDI really got off the ground.
mm,
He was, it's really impactful. So, and it's still the legacy lives on. Matter of
mm-hmm.
fact, while we's on now, I just got a email confirming our you know, us teaching down there this summer. So looking forward
Hmm.
to it. But as we wrap things up, I guess we'll go around and we'll start with Mommy Elaine and David and myself, and then we'll just kind of put a bow on this new program, this new format, this new way we doing things to get the message out. And I see David's clean fingernails right there. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Spirit fingers.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right.
I want
What
you
you
all
got?
to know I did the best I could with these
Right,
boys. So when they
right.
do,
Mm-hmm.
silly stuff like that, that's not, you
Hmm.
not me, not me. But
Mhm.
no, I enjoyed this. It was very interesting, and your book sounds like it's something I even might want to read, even though I'm not in that profession. But it sounds like it has a lot of great principles, and principles can be applied to whatever you're doing, whatever your profession is, whatever your job is, or even if you're in retirement. And so I think that makes it extra special to have something that can be multi-purpose for even somebody that might not be in this particular have this particular job, but it can be applied to your everyday life.
Mhm. Mhm.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Miss Elaine. Thank you for joining us. You really added a lot to the show. Thank you.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you.
David.
She always does. Steve Harvey says the one of the scariest two words in the English language are "you're next," um, and so it's always good to talk to somebody who's talking about the preparation that
Mm,
alleviates that fear. You have no fear about being next when you're
mm,
ready. You have the fear
mm-hmm.
about being next
Wow,
when you're not sure if
absolutely.
you can handle it and if you're ready. So,
Mm-hmm.
just all this conversation about preparation and about really dealing with who you are before you start, talking about taking the test and things like that is something that a lot of people don't necessarily deal with. And so I applaud, the uniqueness of that, but the importance of that. So, and, I appreciate that, Chief. And this sounds then like a very powerful book and one that'll be an asset for people in the service and outside of the service. So thanks a lot for being our guest and sharing that knowledge with us.
Mhm.
Thank you, David.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yep. Well, like I'm just gonna reiterate. I'm glad we were able to connect and get you on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, you've been instrumental in a lot of people who have been promoted and will continue to be promoted because you're still in the game. This book is going to help elevate even more people, and I think that when we have a heart to serve and help with these succession plans around the country that you're part of or don't know how much you're a part of, when you're a part of that, you're doing something great. And so I'm glad to I always known you by name, the brand name, but just to get to know you and talk to you more, and hopefully we stay in touch more after this. It's just because if you know the mind, you got to know me. We just gonna
Mm,
share, we just
mm,
share brain.
Hmm. Hmm.
But my point is that I'm always glad to be in the company of people who um, work to give back in a lot of
Hmm.
ways. Because everybody knows you don't get rich writing a book. You just don't. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people in the business, and I wrote a book. I'm set. It's
mm,
not
mm,
you don't get it. You don't get rich writing a book, so you're not doing it for any motivation in that regard. Um,
mm,
but you definitely are doing it for obviously the right reasons. It's going to serve a lot of people,
mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
especially if they take heed to it and can witness on how this book and how your methodology and teaching has helped. There's a lot more people who are going to be promoted,
Mm,
and you've had a hand in that. So, um, hats off and salute to you for that. Um, and it makes me want to just continue to step my game up. Writing a book is, I've said this
mm,
before, I'm getting ready to get the funny faces from the other two on the writing a book
whatever.
just seems intimidating to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm going to do it. I just ain't got to it yet, but it's
Hmm.
I'm
Well,
Hmm.
going.
there's a motivational speaker that you may have heard of, Dr. Eric Thomas, the hip hop
Mm-hmm,
preacher.
mm-hmm,
So I've read a lot of his books. I've studied a lot of his motivational factors. And if for those of you that may not have heard of Eric Thomas, he was homeless at 16, eating out of dumpsters, and now
Mm,
he's a PhD and he's an incredible motivational speaker. And he is one of the things that helped motivate me for the process, because it is intimidating to write the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to lie to
Thank
you.
you.
I started writing this book over 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I had an outline, I had notes, and I kept, one day, and when COVID hit, I said, this is the day, and now I'm going to do it. And that's kind of what started it. But I thought that I would slow up in my training business and fire assessment center prep with COVID, and actually was the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So it became a passion project. But a lot of writers that I spoke to talking about mentors, I said, the only thing you have to do is write. Just sit down. If it's 15 minutes, it's 15 minutes. If it's an hour, it's an hour. But you're not going to get anywhere unless you start writing. And I took that to heart, and I just, I set aside 50, and I'm a morning person, so I set aside some time in the morning, and, I did 20 minutes one day, 30 days another, and then the days that I really got rolling, I maybe did a little bit longer. So don't get intimidated. Go for it. Follow your passion. You have a lot of great information to share. It's just a matter of putting it down and putting it in a way that will relate to your audience.
Sure. Yeah. No, I am. I know. And with the articles I've written and all the research papers I had to write, most people say you wrote a book already. So, so it's just a matter of focusing it and making it, part of this particular process. So I will. It's just a lot of things I've said over the years that I'll get to it, and then I've gotten to it. I was going to finish my degree. I did it. I was, there's a lot of other goals. So I know I'm going to do it. I just, like you said, have to sit down and just start writing and making it happen. But you're just another inspiration in that long list of, inspiration. So I appreciate that. But like I said, I'm looking forward to getting the book. I know you signed it, probably to my dear friend Larry. Best wishes and all this. So
you know that.
but anyway, but I'm looking forward to reading it because you can always learn. I mean, just because I've reached this rank of deputy chief doesn't mean I need to stop learning and have a resource, because I'm big on a word we really learned to internalize from a few years back. I guess Chief Craig Haig out of Hanover Park in Illinois. He talked about succession planning, and that succession planning is one of the things that should be a major thing that's on your radar if you're in any kind of chief position or anything like that, because you want to train the people who one day replace you, because you're not going to be there forever. So, but this is going to be a great resources in our succession planning and getting our officers ready to move up and take over and take charge. And we got 2 new young people we just hired. We're excited about their future, and we're looking to do things. I'm putting together a training division that I hope that will benefit not only our department but the region. And but part of that succession plan is starting them from, okay, here's day one, and here's how I look to get to the fire chief. Now you might not want to be a chief, but at least you got a ladder to climb, and there's a succession plan in place. And one of the things is how to prepare for advancement. And I'm sure your book is going to go a long way. So I'll definitely read it and then make it a resource at our department in Collinsville. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
If I could share a quote before we wrap up, if I could just share a quick quote, if you'll indulge me. So one of the quotes I have in the book is from a Stoic philosopher, Epictetus, and it talks about his teachings, 5 valuable lessons for self-improvement. And they're very brief. It says, 1, you become what you give your attention to. 2, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. 3, to improve, you must be okay with looking foolish. 4, you can't learn what you think you already know. And number 5, stop waiting to demand the best for yourself.
Oh my goodness.
So that's how I end the chapter about overcoming obstacles and overcoming self-doubt and I don't have time, I'm not ready. That's how I ended that chapter. And I thought it was a great way to talk about it.
It is.
That's amazing.
That's something that I need to copy, and just people need to copy and put it up somewhere.
Put it on the mirror.
Yeah, while you brush your teeth. Not that
Yeah.
again. Okay, let me get to it. So
Note to self.
yeah, note to self. Like So I think I heard the sermon one time about that. Note to self.
Mhm.
But anyway, so thanks for hanging out with us, Chief Freddie,
Yes.
and we a lot of times we do have people that come back on the show, and we kind of
Mhm.
see I know where we started and what they say
Yeah.
how it started, and we'll get back after the books and New York bestsellers list and how's it going.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
we want to.
Sounds
Mhm.
good. I'll always make myself available for you guys.
Yeah, we'll
Right.
Thank
circle
you.
back, and then he lives in
Yeah.
one of my favorite places, somewhere warm, David. So I might have to
Yeah, no,
go down
which
there.
means we'll never see you, Chief, because everywhere he
Yes,
sends us is cold. So
David, David, we be going to like just. I'm not gonna name any place I want to insult anybody, but sometimes be like, don't they got firefighters that need glue in Barbados or something? You know,
yeah,
somewhere warm,
surely some
tropical.
leadership training, yeah, is needed in
In
Hawaii. You
Hawaii,
know,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
found us up in
Mm.
the Dakotas in the
Got
summertime.
Mm-hmm.
you.
So,
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to
but
meet you.
yeah,
Thank you,
Yeah,
Elaine.
nice to
Same
meet
here.
you,
My
Chief.
pleasure. And thank you,
Mhm.
Larry. Thank you, David.
yeah. So
Yes, sir.
check us out. I think we'll be looking at the schedule. I don't know if it's a new schedule, but I think the schedule is going to be the same. Just the format is going to be about a bit different here on the fire engineering platform. But we're going to look forward to continue to perfect this and have more exciting guests like our guest tonight, Chief Freddie. And also check us out at www.gluenationldc.com. See where in the world are David and Larry,
Mm-hmm.
brothers from North St. Louis, just out doing the things in the world, trying to help and serve as many people as I can with our dynamic workshop, the Glue Personal Leadership Workshop. We're going to be, like I said, FDIC. By the time you see this podcast, FDIC will be behind us, but we got FDIC coming up. Where we mentioned Carl Holmes, Executive Development Institute, EDI. We got the Black Chief Officers Conference that's going to be down in Fort Lauderdale. Hey, we might be kind of
Mm-mm.
close.
Wait a minute.
Yeah,
Hey,
you
you got
know,
my phone number. You
yeah,
got my
right.
phone
Going
number.
down. Yeah, yeah. Get some Florida sun down there. So we'll be down there in July. I know we're going to the Lake of the Ozarks in June, and so we got stuff to do down there as well. Spreading some glue. Where else? I should have wrote all this stuff down. There are so many dates, and I'm just
Mm,
Right,
mm,
remembering
right.
the
mm.
highlights. Um, no,
Maybe
oh
on the
yeah, I can't
website.
forget the Foods convention. We're going to be there
Mm-hmm.
August in Minneapolis. Might go see some print stuff if we have a chance day while we're up there. You know,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So anyway, we're just going to be we're doing what we do. We're on the road. We're having a good time. David and I have been playing like we were newscasters and TV guests
Mhm.
since we were kids, and now we just
Mm-hmm.
grown doing it,
Mm-hmm.
but helping
Mm-hmm.
people at the same time. So it's always
Mm.
fun. So check us out on the website and see where we are, and then give us a shout. We can come to a town near you. Have glue. We'll travel. So
Mm-hmm.
that what
Mm-hmm.
glue is all about. Is a personal leadership, and then maybe we can partner up with Chief Freddie one day and bomb burst one of his sessions and say, hey, before you get started learning all this bolt, nuts and bolts, we got some personal leadership stuff we want to share with you. Get you ready. You know,
Man, that'd be
we could be
amazing.
the open. We could be the opening act for you there.
Wow.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
we could be Morris
That'd
Day
be
at the time. You could be
that'd
Prince.
be amazing.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
I,
but anyway,
I,
thanks for
I did the
coming.
best I could.
Yeah, she did the best she could, but we're still doing us. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but thanks for hanging out, and look forward to the book, and we'll see you sometime, hopefully before the this year, Chief Freddie, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks again.
So
All
long.
right,
Thanks.
thanks.